A little bit of a different video today. We are reacting to what's the worst financial advice you've ever received on Reddit. And this thread specifically comes from the Dave Ramsey subreddit. I'll be pulling up some of the top comments and reacting to them. And of course, there's going to be a lot of learning mixed in. So grab a drink and let's get started. All right, so first comment from National Net 6831. This person's worst financial advice that they ever received was to not rebalance crypto when it was 33% of my assets. And yeah, I would say that's probably not great. I'm not sure what this person's entire portfolio looked like at the time, but given that crypto is such a volatile asset, if it ever does become a really big portion of your entire net worth, you really got to think about rebalancing it and spreading that love to some of the other traditional investments you might have. That's especially true if you're a super aggressive degen investing in meme coins. So some of those coins, like the Haktua coin, for example, they can literally go to zero in a flash. Now, I hope that this person didn't leave 33% of their net worth in like Haktua or Fart coin, because that is literally the worst thing that you can do. Now, if 33% of their net worth was in Bitcoin, it's still super risky, but not as bad. I think you just got to understand the nature of the beast, which is that crypto can fluctuate so much. And on this channel, we like to say that crypto should be viewed as an alternative investment that takes up maybe 3 to 5% of your portfolio. All right, next comment comes from Deleted. So I guess this person probably deleted their account, but still they said, aggressively pay off my 2.375% mortgage, aggressively pay off my 3% student loans. He thinks that's terrible advice. However, is this actually a terrible thing? So I think there are two camps when it comes to this debate. On one hand, you have those financial optimizers, those that are trying to optimize literally everything when it comes to their money. So an example right now that might be applicable is perhaps somebody owes $100,000 on a mortgage at 2.75%. Well, if they had that same $100,000 sitting in a high yield savings account getting 4.5%, then theoretically that person could be receiving $4,500 a year in interest, while their 100K loan is only costing them 2.75, so $2,750 a year. That's a difference of $1,750 per year, but wait, even if you factor in taxes at the highest ordinary income rate, you still come out ahead with the high yield account, but at that point, it's only a couple $100s. The other camp or school of thought is that paying off any type of debt, even if it is low interest rate debt, gives you peace of mind and simplifies your finances since there's one less financial obligation to handle. What I really think it just comes down to here is prioritization. So this type of debate is always going to be relevant, and it's always going to be different for everyone's personal situation. The interest rate environment is also going to determine how you prioritize your money. If you're on the risk averse or conservative side, I don't think it's the worst financial advice out there to pay off your low interest rate mortgage, for example. I don't think we are as humans as perfect as we think we are. So even if it makes more financial sense to say, put your money in a high yield account and then pay off the loan with the high yield interest, it doesn't always play out that way. That method assumes everyone is perfectly disciplined and making the right decisions all the time. And it also assumes that you have the loan value of your mortgage sitting in a high yield savings account, which, let's be honest, not everyone will have just 100K lying around. I'd love to know what you guys think, but for now, let's go to the next comment. All right, Crafty Sunday 6351 says that the worst financial advice that they've ever received is a financial planner told us that we were saving too much money. All right, so here, I always think saving money is a good thing. I mean, famously, my dad always would tell me growing up that for every $10 that I earned, to basically only try to spend $1 of it. Now, obviously, that would mean I have a 90% savings rate, which is pretty impossible these days, but I think the intent behind the phrase was to save as much money as you can. Now that I've been doing this for a while, I actually do think that you can save too much. If you're already exceeding your financial goals for your current age by a large amount, and if your savings habits are starting to, let's say, affect your friendships or maybe negatively impact your life, then you might want to reevaluate if you are saving too much. This is really only a problem for those that are just really good at savings. So if you are one of these people, you kind of need to ask yourself, how much is enough and when is enough? If you're able to spend more money to at least make your life a little bit more fulfilling and enjoyable, that's the entire point of this whole thing. We accumulate money so that we can buy some freedom and some pleasure in our lives. And we don't really want our relationships and our life to suffer as a result of an obsession with saving. Another sign that you might be saving too much money is that you might sacrifice your health and needs for saving instead. And I think this is just a really common thing with hyper accumulators of wealth. They might put off certain things that they actually need to do in order to save money. I shouldn't have to tell you guys, but your health should come number one, because that should be the biggest priority in your life. Because if you aren't healthy, you can't really be spending your money anyway. So when it comes to health and health insurance, never cheap out. All right, next comment comes from Kha'Zix Main. So this is a League of Legends reference for those of you that don't know. And Kha'Zix is one one of those really annoying bug heroes with a really annoying ultimate. Anyways, I digress. This user says, do not use a credit card. Why wouldn't I? I have all my reoccurring bills like internet and Netflix on one credit card that I have set on autopay. I'm earning 2 to 3% back in building credit. I understand the argument of spending more for purchases, but the perfect use case is to set it and forget it with bills. Yeah, and so from his perspective, I do think that that is a bad type of financial advice that you can be getting, because I kind of agree with him here. If you can stay disciplined with a credit card, I think it's one of the best tools out there to maximize your money, but make sure to follow my 4 rules of using credit cards. Number 1, don't spend what you don't have. This should be a no-brainer, but if you don't have $1,000 in your checking account, don't spend $1,000 on your credit card. Number 2, if you do spend money on a credit card, pay it off in full every week, every 2 weeks, or at least every month. So I personally pay mine off every few days just to make sure I know exactly how much money I've spent lately. Number 3, never run a balance on a credit card, like ever. Anytime you do, you're killing the benefits, and the accruing interest is just a slippery slope for your finances. And number 4, really understand what type of behaviors you're susceptible to. So if you're someone who is really impulsive with spending, don't use a credit card. And if you're someone that can't stick to deadlines, don't use a credit card as well. If you follow these 4 rules with credit card spending, then it can actually benefit you to use a credit card in the long run. All right, next comment here from Ozar Zoso. He says that the worst financial advice he ever received was to invest using debt. It took me years to get out. Thank you, Robert Kiyosaki. That's pretty funny. So my guess is that this person read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is the book that Robert Kiyosaki authored. And in that book, the author strongly advocates for using debt to invest. And in fact, I think he just calls it good debt, AKA just leverage. Robert Kiyosaki likes to use borrowed money to invest in assets like real estate, and argues that rich people use good debt to multiply their returns. If you know what you're doing, it may be a good strategy, but when it comes to debt, oftentimes you are flirting with more risk, and it's really not appropriate for everyone out there. Not only that, if you ever experience a downturn in the market that you're investing in, you could lose a lot more money than you originally signed up for. So surprisingly, this thread continues, and someone asked the original commenter what they invested in, to which he replies that he bought shares with 100% leverage. Don't do it. I learned my lesson, and now I'm 100% invested in index funds. And so yes, I think that while Robert Kiyosaki might have intended for people to only use good debt through leverage on, say, real estate, this is where financial advice can get misinterpreted a lot, or perhaps lost in the sauce. All of a sudden, if the message you are hearing is that it takes money borrowed to make money, you could all of a sudden think to buy stocks with leverage, or maybe you start a business with a huge business loan. While leverage does multiply your gains when you are right and you're doing well, it can also magnify your losses if you're not careful. I mean, the 2008 financial crisis was basically predicated on the idea that there was too much leverage throughout the entire market, and that's why it collapsed. All right, next comment comes from Oak Tree Gardener. Follow your dreams and the money will work itself out. Nope, that's not how money works. It's not gonna chase you if you don't chase it. All right, so this one is funny. I can only imagine that this is someone's spiritual counselor, or perhaps delusional grandma giving them this advice. Follow your dreams is a really bad recommendation to give, because while it does have good intentions, money doesn't work itself out just because you wish upon a star. We have to have somewhat realistic goals that also ensure that we make ends meet, and ideally our dream falls along that path somewhere. So one of my friends, for example, Sarah, she was really passionate about painting and quit her steady marketing job to follow her dream as a full-time artist. But despite her talent, she assumed the money would just work itself out once she dedicated herself to art. Fast forward 6 months later, and she's struggling to pay the bills and really just didn't have a strategy to get her artwork in front of potential buyers. Essentially, she spent 6 months just painting, but not really actually marketing her painting. It wasn't until she started to approach her passion like a business that things actually started to turn around. So she had to create a social media page, which I helped her with. She had to research and approach galleries to try to get her artwork into those said galleries. And she had to do actually tutoring, one-on-one lessons. That way she could make some money on the side. Most importantly, she had to actually understand that she needed to have more money coming in than she was spending, because her savings was dwindling at a very alarming rate. I personally found that the more you pay attention to money, the likelihood you make more money actually goes up. It's kind of like tracking your weight for fitness. Like, the more you track your own weight, the more mindful you are of it throughout the day, and the little decisions around choosing what to eat for dinner, or perhaps what you eat for a snack. Those little decisions compound, and they make a huge difference on your overall fitness. All right, next spicy comment here comes from Fizzban2. He says that the worst financial advice that they've ever received is quote, whole life. Boy, this is a juicy topic. I am not a fan of whole life insurance for a few reasons. First, whole life is often advertised to you as an investment because they have what's called a cash value position. And to understand how that cash value position works, we should at least first understand what term life insurance is, because it will really show you how bad of a product whole life insurance is. So in term life insurance, you pay a set amount of money for a death benefit. So for example, let's say someone who's 30 years old right now, on average, they might spend $20 a month for 20 years of insurance and $500,000 of coverage. Think of it like car insurance in that way. You're paying the $20 a month or $240 a year. And if you pass away ever, your beneficiary will receive the death benefit of $500,000. After 20 years though, the coverage ends at that point and you can renew it at that point, but simply put, the $20 a month premium just goes for that 20-year term. Now, whole life is very different. You pay a very costly monthly premium, and that fee is often in the hundreds of dollars per month. The average cost of a premium monthly for a 30-year-old that is healthy is $421 per month, and that's about $5,000 a year. The premiums go to funding three things. So number one is your own death benefit coverage. So in our example, it was $500,000. Number two, your premiums go towards your salesperson's commissions. And then finally, number three is your cash value. This is what's different about whole life insurance that salespeople will try to convince you of. They'll call the cash value a savings component that you can invest and grow with tax advantages. But the thing is that your monthly premiums that you pay for the first 5 to 10 years you have whole life, they barely even go towards the cash value. For the first 5 to 10 years, they in fact go to paying none other than your salesperson in the form of commissions as well as admin fees and funding your own death benefit insurance coverage. So the fees are really front loaded in this case, and really there's a ton of opportunity cost here. So take our example above. Let's say term life insurance was costing you $400 a year and then whole life insurance was costing you $4,800 a year. That's a difference of $4,400 per year. If you simply invested the difference of $4,400 a year compounded at 8% in the market over 20 years, the ending balance would be $219,657.43. A whole life insurance cash value typically has an average annual return of 1 to 3.5%. So after a period of 20 years, the ending cash value is going to be around $142,000 at the high end of that return. So right then and there, it just probably makes more sense to just buy term insurance and then invest the money instead. Lastly, if you want to use your cash value at any time, you can borrow against it, which sounds nice, but you have to pay a percentage fee on that money. So what I don't like about that is that you have to pay a percentage on your own money to even borrow it, and I think that's terrible. Now, there will be some people in the comments that will try to tell you that whole life insurance can make sense for certain people. And yes, I acknowledge that in some special cases, it can definitely make sense. For example, if you have a child with a disability and you want lifelong coverage. But if you don't have a specific situation like this, it's generally a bad deal, and that's a big blanket statement. All right, the next comment comes from Constant Particular 89, and the worst financial advice he ever received was Dave Ramsey's advice to do everything possible to have no credit score. I don't have debt, but I will continue to use and fully pay off my credit card every month to maintain my near perfect credit score. Having no credit score will make your life hell if you do need financing in the future. It's so unrealistic to tell people to pay cash for houses, and underwriting for a mortgage is a nightmare and offered very rarely. So yeah, 100% agreed right here. You really need a credit score for almost everything in life. And while technically it can keep you out of debt if you just never engage in the credit world in the first place, I don't see people paying for houses with briefcases of cash these days. So much more challenging to buy a house without a credit score or a car without a credit score. And if you don't have a credit score in the US and you get by fine, I would love to hear your story in the comments, but for most people, I just don't find this realistic. Next comment comes from a dog, BPS 502, and he says, woof, 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 woof. In other words, a used car costs as much as a new car. I literally read this every day. So this comment is surprising to me. A used car is definitely cheaper than a comparable new car. My guess is that the people giving this financial advice are assuming you'll have to put so much more work into the car that it negates the cost savings of the used portion. But as long as you're buying a used car that's about 3 to 5 years used, it's going to cost much less than the same new car. That's because depreciation is a huge cost that gets front loaded in a car's life. So as we say on this channel, try to buy a car that's 3 to 5 years used, so that way most of the depreciation inflation has been absorbed already, and then you can just enjoy a gently used car at a much cheaper price. Next comment comes from Farmers BSD17, and the worst financial advice they ever received was to not buy Apple at $15. And yes, this is poor financial advice looking back in hindsight, but of course, who knows what the landscape looked like for Apple stock back when it was $15 at the time. I remember similarly when Tesla stock first came onto the market in 2012, it was trading for about $25 to $30 per share. And this is all before the splits, of course, and many people were skeptical about Tesla's future prospects. Obviously, if you know what you know now, it would be a no-brainer to buy it at, say, $25 pre-split, but in the moment, it's going to be much harder to decide that that's a good stock to buy. Hindsight is always 20/20 in those cases, and you shouldn't kick yourself if you can't get a stock at a really low price, even though at the time, it was probably a good decision to kind of hold off. That's why you always want to improve your own knowledge when it comes to financial literacy and stocks, and as long as you're making the best possible decisions given the information you have at the time, that's all you really can do, and pat yourself on the back. All right, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to let me know in the comments, and make sure to check out this video right here on why you don't feel rich, even though you might already be. I think that's a really good one that you're gonna enjoy, and I will see you guys in that video or a future one on the channel. Thank you for being here. Peace.